Welcome to the Bike Life Podcast by Warmshowers Foundation, where we will be sharing knowledge, experience, tools, and stories of touring cyclists and hosts from around the world. I'm Tara Lee, the woman behind the scenes at Warmshowers Foundation, the leading platform for cyclists looking for hosts and to connect with a passionate international community. Find out more by visiting us at Warmshowers.org. Now, on to the show. Welcome back to another episode of Bike Life, where we are talking to the amazing, the well-known, the returning guest, Ken Francis. And today, Ken has brought someone special to join us. So, Ken, would you like to introduce Philip, please?
Yes, I would like to introduce Philip Robinson, my touring companion for over 25 years now. I thought it'd be fun to do a podcast with him just to kind of show everybody our chemistry, how we have traveled together over the years. And he is also a Warm Showers host in Seattle, kind of how we have shared cyclists even to this day.
That's so interesting. So, Philip, let's go ahead and have you talk a little bit about yourself. How did touring start? And of course, how did you meet Ken? We want all the details.
Okay. I'll let Ken explain how we met, but I actually started bike touring probably in the 90s. I joined my sister and her husband on supported tours throughout Oregon. So we did probably about 5 of those. And they sort of had a change in lifestyle and all of a sudden sort of dropped off on that. And so I was sort of looking for something different and sort of found Ken, in the early days of the internet. And so we sort of connected. And 6 months later after that, we did our first tour from Spokane to Calgary. Now for Ken, it was, he went all the way from Calgary back down, but I left at that point. So I'll let Ken explain a little more about that.
So this was back kind of at the dawn of the internet, where you weren't supposed to meet people from the internet. And we met in a chat room that was kind of based on outdoor activities. And I knew that he was into cycling and he lived in the Pacific Northwest. And I was planning a trip from Spokane to Calgary through the Canadian Rockies and then down to Missoula. I wanted to do this trip 2 or 3 years before that, but I wasn't able to get as much time off from work. So I did kind of a truncated version of it through Glacier National Park and not making it into Canada. So I had the opportunity. He seemed like he lived in the area. He was a cyclist. Hey, would you like to do this? And his response was, really, you'd want to go touring with me? And I got flack from people on my end. He could be an axe murderer. You don't know who this person is. And he got flack on his end for the same thing. And the reason he went to Calgary is because he didn't really want to commit to 2 weeks. Some stranger off the internet. 1 week was good enough. And he had a friend meet him and pick him up in Calgary. And they did a van trip on the way back. And when you got back, what did you tell me, Philip?
I can't remember. Go ahead.
You said I had a miserable time.
I wish, yes, that's true. The van trip did not work out so well. My friend, she, I don't know, it was challenging at the time. So, but it didn't work out, and I probably should have stayed with Ken for the full 2 weeks. Yeah. Yes. So, but all's good. Yeah.
So that was in 1998. In 2000, we cycled from Spokane to Boise. In 2001, we did the Columbia River to San Francisco. 2002, the Big Island of Hawaii. 2003, crossed Colorado. 2004, crossed Wisconsin. 2005, Boston to Pennsylvania. 2006 was our first Alaska tour, where we had 2 others join us on that trip. 2007, we did Hawaii again. Both Hawaii trips, we had friends join us. 2008, Spokane to Seattle via the Cascades. 2009, it was our second Alaska trip. 2010, loop through Utah. 2011, Arizona loop. 2012, Halifax to Boston. Our trip started getting a little longer. 2013, Lower Mississippi. 2015, Iceland. 2015, California coast. 2016, the Rhine River. 2017, Thunder Bay to Minneapolis, 2018, the Danube, 2019, the Gulf Coast, 2020, I did the Cascades and Philip joined me on the first couple days of that trip. That was during the pandemic. And then later we did a pandemic tour along the interstate from Flagstaff to El Paso, Texas. 2021, Europe and Germany. 2022, Knoxville to Savannah. And last year's trip was a little bit different because Philip injured himself. It was to be London to Amsterdam, and Philip just did London. And how are you doing now, Philip?
Well, as you can see, I have a scar from a broken wrist. So, but anyway, I had a bike accident where I caught the heel of my foot on the top tube, went straight back and landed straight down on my wrist, and it shattered it. So I've been that took about 6 to 12 weeks to heal so far. And so there's a plate in there, and occasionally it does get it. Anyway, enough of that. I'm healing. I've got a little numbness, but I'll leave it at that.
We've never had a bad trip. So this is like the first obstacle that's come up. Now, a couple times, I think in New York State, I think you and I hit each other and you wobbled and fell over.
Right.
And then in, I think the Danube trip, was that when you turned the corner too fast and hit the tree?
Yeah, no.
You must tell us that story. You got to tell us
a couple minor things.
Yeah, no. I actually, I missed it. They have a lot of trails over in Germany, which are great, and they're sort of curvy. And so I missed a curve, and the front wheel went off, and I barely missed a tree. So I went down, and all of a sudden everything is just like everywhere. And it's like, okay, where's Ken? So, but I did pick myself up and I started pedaling, and I did finally catch up with Ken, and he says, what happened? And so, but anyway, it's one of those things that you just can't predict. And, but I was able to get back on and continue. So no injury on that one.
So how many miles, have you calculated how many miles you've done together? Because this is amazing.
No, usually
Ken. Oh, I was gonna say Ken pretty much does the mileage. I don't always keep track of that because it's more about the adventure, not so many miles. The miles don't matter to me so much.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they're 100, then you're grown.
Right, unless they're 100, and then all of a sudden if it's 98, okay, I'll join Ken for the last 2 to get to that 100. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm a good trooper with stuff like that. But
that was actually our first experience. I think it was maybe our 3rd day on the road on our very first trip. We were in Radiant Hot Springs in Canada. Yes. And I looked at my odometer and we were at 94 miles. And I said to him, I don't know when the last time you did 100 miles was, but it's been a while for me. And I just can't stop at 94 knowing that I'm only 6 miles away. And I said, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I'm going to be riding up and down every street in the town until my odometer hits 100. And he said, okay, I will join you. So that kind of shows kind of our relationship with, spontaneity and flexibility and working together and communicating. And he could have easily have said, I'll see you at camp, which would have been okay too.
Right. Yes, I thought at that point, I thought, well, this guy's dedicated. It was like my first, it was my first time really with Ken in person. So I thought, okay, this guy's got a plan here. So let's go with it.
And we've had 2 different styles. And I think part of that is us adapting our styles. Cyclists that I've ridden with prior to Philip, I had expectations that we always did things the same way. We always traveled together. And that created a lot of tension, a lot of conflict. So with Philip, it's like, I'm going to try something different. We're going to be able to go at our own pace. And in the beginning, Philip was always way in front of me. Philip had much faster pace than I did. Hills are a little bit different. Hills, Philip is slow and steady, and I tend to charge up more, and then I get off my walk, charge up more, and I get off on a walk, and we tend to get it to the summit at the same time. And I think that's a good example of just how we work together with our own individuality, but still travel together.
Yeah, we don't actually have to ride together. I have to say, it was a little faster at the start, but today I'm much slower. So Canada's like that. Going off the trail in Germany, it's like he was way ahead. And but anyway, it's all good. We all get to the destination in one piece, so all's good.
What are some of the other important pieces that you think create a compatible riding partner? Like, what are some of the other ways in which you compromise or work together so you're, having each other's back and still enjoying the journey and not feeling like you are completely changing the way you want to experience it? And maybe, Philip, I'll start with you.
Let's start with Ken on that one.
I love it.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that I feel I taught Philip because I had done more self-supportive touring, and he was doing supported touring at the time. And there's stuff that he taught me. And I asked him to think about this question because things that Philip taught me how to use a cell phone. I didn't have a cell phone when we were traveling. And one of the first trips, it was raining. And he said to me, it's raining. And I called ahead to a motel. And I thought, oh, you have a phone and you can do that. And he also taught me how to use motels because that was the M word. That was like not a part of my vocabulary. I would like wild camp before I ever, spent money on a motel. And now it's like, especially on a hot day, air conditioning can be really good, especially if there's a pool around. He taught me the importance of always carrying electrical tape. On one of our last trips, my spoke liner was going out and it was actually causing my bike to have all these multiple flats. And he whipped out some electrical tape and I was able to just tape my rim, and that saved me the rest of the trip. So always carry electrical tape. Always carry pliers with all my tools. I don't have pliers. And when we did the trip to El Paso, we were on the interstate, and the interstate has all the blowouts from all the truck tires and they have these little wire beads. So I was stopping about every 2-3 miles and checking my tires and pulling these little strips of metal out before they worked their way in to give me a flat. I got 2 of them the first day, and after that I learned my lesson to check in. And I think the most important thing I've learned from Philip is always carry ChapStick.
Yeah, I'm never far from a ChapStick, that's for sure. It's like, if you're around me, and it's like it would be impossible for me not to have it. So, speaking of flats, that El Paso trip, Ken was very lucky. I have fenders, so it's like really tough to try to pull out. But living in the Northwest, it gets very wet here, so you need fenders up here. So, and the other thing I learned from Ken are zip ties. So I lost a bolt on my rack once, and it's like, okay, zip tie will do it. And I actually had a zip tie on that for quite a while until I went to a shop and they fixed it, put an actual real bolt in. So those kinds of things are good. And I sort of learned duct tape from skiing, because if you're, it covers everything and usually holds most everything in place if you need it to get to where you need to go. So, but when it came to cell phones, I had one for work because I was on call back then, and not that I was on call on that trip, but I started carrying it, and you get used to using one. So, and then a motel, that's what a credit card's for. So there are times when it's like, okay, it's been a long day. I need a shower. I need a real place to sleep. So, and as I've often joked, I've worked for 40 years. So, what else do I have to spend my money on? So, but anyway. Those kinds of things.
So those are really
a couple other things
really
that
good
I taught
shares.
you.
Keep going, Ken. Keep going.
Yeah, and this was in the early days. We haven't done this lately, but I taught Philip how to hitchhike. There were times when it was like, okay, we are not riding now. We are hitchhiking, and that was something that Philip was just like, I can't see myself doing that. And we were in Idaho one time, coming down this huge hill, and we had already climbed a couple thousand feet, and we got to the bottom of the hill. There was a river, but then the road kept on going back up again. So I had thought we had crossed the pass, and we didn't cross the pass. We still had another couple thousand feet of climbing to do. And as we were heading back up the hill, I joked to Philip and I said, "This is where you should throw your thumb out." And there was a truck passing by at the time, unbeknownst to me, and saw me do that and made a U-turn and pulled over and picked us up and took us to the top of the pass.
Yeah, that convinced me right then and there. So, and there was one other time in the Oregon coast when it was raining, just raining and raining and raining. And it's like, okay, we're about 30 miles behind. And so you go to a gas station and I had sort of childlike, kid-like features way back. And so I would actually go up to people and just, hi, can you help us out here? And oftentimes they would. And one of my favorites was in Colorado, where there was a FedEx truck. And I went out, because I'm a former FedEx employee. So I went up to the guy and I said, would you be willing to help us out? And so sure enough, he was able to pick us up and deliver us 30 miles later in Colorado. So that was fun. So
every time I see a FedEx truck to this day, I think of myself as a package that was delivered. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the very, very first time was on the first trip in Canada. There was a 30 or 40 mile stretch of road that was being resurfaced, and it was dirt. And they had flag cars taking the people through one group at a time. And we're walking our bicycles up to the front of the line, and we passed this huge Ford F-350 truck. And I made a comment to Philip as we walked by. I said, this should be the truck to get. And I stuck my thumb out. And Philip had never hitchhiked before. And when the car pulled up alongside of us, the guy rolled his window down and he says, yeah, do you want to ride? And I said, absolutely. He didn't even ask Philip, do you want to do this? Absolutely. So we put the bikes in the back of the truck, and the guy asked if we wanted to sit inside. And Philip was like, no, I don't feel comfortable sitting inside. So he sat out with the bike, and I'm in the truck with the guy. And as we're driving, there was so much dirt in the air being kicked up. The guy said, is your friend okay? And I said, yeah, he likes to be in the back of the truck. So I think you learned your lesson to be inside after that.
Yes, after that, I'll go inside. So,
and then the other thing that I taught Philip, how to wild camp and how to camp in a city park. Those were other things that just seemed to him to be kind of out of the question.
Tell us about that, Philip.
Well, the city park, I thought, okay, city parks, sure, why not? But we were in Wisconsin, and there was a shelter there, and I managed to roll my sleeping bag out, and I actually slept fairly well. We were near, I believe, a sawmill or a pulp mill, so that white noise actually put me to sleep. And the next morning, we went to breakfast. We sort of go to these sort of local breakfast joints, where I guess your local people would hang out. And sure enough, we met some other cyclists there. They were out just for a day ride. And I swear, panniers on a bike, it's just an instant welcome. People are always curious about what you are doing and where did you stay? What did you do? And they all seem to think I'd like to do that too someday. And so we did. And I survived. The other once was in Oregon once. We left Seaside, and we ended up having to wild camp there. And that was my first time taking a bath inside a restaurant bathroom. But it worked out just fine. You rise to the occasion, and it all ends up usually being pretty good.
Yeah, I think in Glen Ellen, Alaska, south of there, before we got to Valdez, I think we stayed in a rest area along the road. And this was before you had your Ort leaps.
Yes, it could have been when I had those other REI ones. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was raining, and Philip, we usually back then I have dry bags now. He has Ort leaps, but we used to back then pack everything in black trash bags. So I remember Philip, knowing that it was going to rain, went through the trash cans in the rest stop, and there were a couple trash cans that hardly had any trash in. So he took the trash out and used the trash bags, but then told me afterwards that his clothes smelled like garbage for the next couple of days.
Right. But they were dry.
I love it. I love
one
it.
time we were in Alaska, and it's like, no, I'm going to put my tent up. And then sure enough, I guess there were enough mosquitoes out there that Ken decided that he was either going to put his tent up or join me in mine. That's when I had a 2-person tent. So, it's just being able to be flexible and just sort of going with it. It's really part of the adventure. So
Were there
being
times?
flexible and go ahead.
I was going to say, were there times when it was harder to be flexible? Meaning, did you have any conflict? I mean, I'm sure in all these journeys, you must have had a couple of little bits of conflict. What was that like?
Oh, we've never had any conflict, terribly. Sorry. It's all been been tailwinds and downhill. I tend to like quieter roads. Ken, he'll go on a freeway in a heartbeat, and but I've learned to appreciate freeways because you've got like a 10-foot shoulder, so you can't argue with that. But our trip from St. Louis to New Orleans, it's like, no, I'd like to go out to do the Natchez Trace Parkway. Ken wanted to do the regular road, so I'd take a detour. But at the end of the day, though, we sort of come back, you sort of do an assessment, and then we work it out. So, and we're actually flexible enough that we can work it out. If Ken wants to do that freeway, great. And then, but I always try to take the road less traveled sometimes, because I like the sequoia, like the redwood forest. I went through the grove of the sequoias, I guess is what it's called. I can't remember now, in Northern California. And it was really very pretty, and Ken stayed on the highway. But, we've worked it out. So once the roads rejoin, everything's fine.
Yeah, I would say our conflicts are on a scale like 1 to 10, maybe like a 2. Sometimes I lose patience, and like with the ChapStick, every time Philip stops, he has to reapply.
I put it on and I lick it right off.
The gloves have to come off. I mean, it's a ritual. The gloves come off, the sunglasses come off, the ChapStick comes out, the glasses go back on, the gloves go back on.
I mean,
that's minor. If that's the worst that you have
right.
with your touring companion, that's not bad. And as far as being flexible and going with it, one of the other things I taught Philip was how to ride roller coasters. And as he told me, he says, "Oh, I get it. You just got to lean into them."
Yeah. So riding a roller coaster, some of the first pictures, I have this death grip on it, and everybody else's, their arms are, yay, it's like, okay. Or I look like a statue in the front of a log run, a log coaster. But I've learned to have a lot of fun. And I will say one of our one of the great trips was we went from Berlin to Krakow, took a train, and to Energylandia, and that was a spectacular park. I have to say that had a rather impressive coaster, and I can see why that's on their bucket list for roller coasters. So,
and we had an incredible experience just getting on the bus to get there. I'm all excited. I mean, when we were planning the trip, we actually took a train from Berlin to Krakow and back to Berlin. And in doing the process, this is, once again, negotiating. And I'm like, I really want to go there, but do we really want to spend like 8 hours on a train each way and take 2 days out of our trip to get there? Let's kind of look at this. Philip looked at me with a stern look and said, "Oh no, Ken, I'm getting you on that roller coaster." Zadra, by the way. So I'm all excited that morning, and we're waiting in line to get on the bus that's going to take us to the park. And Philip says, this bus is getting kind of crowded. Let's get in line for the next one. So we get in line for the next bus. They open the door. We go up above where there's this big, huge window on the double-decker bus, and we're sitting in the front so we can see the whole Polish countryside. And I'm just chatting away about this roller coaster. And there's a kid sitting next to Philip that says in perfect English, "When you ride that roller coaster, make sure you sit in the very back left seat. That's the sweet spot." And I looked at him and I said, "It's funny that you should say that because somebody said this on social media about 2 months ago." He says, "I know, that was me." And I looked it up and it's like, "Are you Derek?" And he says, "I am." So it was his 17th birthday and he got to go into the park for free on his birthday. And stayed with us the entire day. He wants to be a pilot and wanted to practice his English. He had a girlfriend that was at the park there with her friends that day, and I think he spent about an hour with her and then came back with us. And, that was just like such an amazing random occurrence. And I'm still in contact with Jared. So
wow, what a thing to
thing.
happen that you saw it on social media and then you heard him on the bus. Now, what's the message about the back left seat? Why?
Oh, it's just you get the most airtime.
Oh,
The airtime, there's the ejector airtime, there's floater airtime. When you're a coaster enthusiast, we're coming down the first hill on this thing, and Philip made a comment after we got off. He says, "I felt like I was going to lose my head on that," and those elements are actually called head choppers. When you're coming down really fast and it looks like you're going to lose your head, those are called head chopper elements. So, if you're into roller coasters, all the lingo. And Philip, over the years, the last few trips, not all of our trips, but the last like 5 years, we've been hitting a lot of theme parks, and Philip's a really good sport.
Yeah.
You know what I love about this? Yeah. I was just going to say, what I love about this, what you just shared, Ken, was that Philip said you're going to go on that coaster. So each other's choices and wins became each other's wins, right? Like you were focusing together on each other's wins. And I love that.
Yeah. The fun thing was trying to get the tickets because we decided to take our bikes too. So we ended up you have to get a reservation for your bike and a reservation for yourself. And yet you start off on a German train and then it ends up being the train crew changes. But just trying to get tickets, it was like, oh my gosh. But the ticket agent there in Berlin was great, and she wanted to make sure at the very end, are you sure you want to do this? This is cost blah, blah, blah. And one of my favorite comments is, it's only money. And she looked at me like I'd landed from Mars, and then she burst out laughing. But, it's like, let's just get this over with, ma'am, we just need to get these tickets and get on this train. So, and then she hands me this huge wad of paper. And I said, is there a ticket in all of this? And I'm not going to have a problem with the conductor or anything like that. Oh, no, it's right there, but oh gosh, you had tickets for your bike, tickets for you, but it worked out really well. And it was a nice, pleasant train ride. So and the food was really good too. So
interesting. So I'm curious, now that Philip, your wrist is healing in the process of healing, what's next?
Well, we're gonna. I couldn't ride on this last trip to London with Ken, but I did join him for about 5 days. So we sort of poked around there. So we're still sort of working on a trip. I've always been curious about doing something from like St. Louis to Boise, Idaho, because that way then I can say I've ridden my bike across the country, not all at once, but so I'm sort of poking around. I think we're still working on a trip for next year.
Usually I do one trip without Philip and one trip with Philip. And this year I'm kind of looking at, and he doesn't know it yet, not Philip. Well, Philip doesn't know it either, but we talked about doing a trip from Chicago to Toronto because there's a lot of good roller coasters between Chicago and Toronto. And while we're still old enough to have, a heart and bones and stuff like that are able to ride roller coasters, I want to do that. I don't know if Len Bulmer yet knows that I'm coming. So he would be he's told me he lives just a couple miles from Canada's Wonderland, which is the large theme park in Toronto there. So I do hope to be dropping in on him. And, with Philip being in Seattle and with me being in Los Angeles, we've hosted the same people. We had a person come from Tunisia a few years ago with a 9-foot sail on his recumbent trike. And he rode from here, started and went up the coast with Philip. Philip was here with a gentleman from France, Laurent, a few years ago. Actually, it was during one of our events here, Dead Cookie Party. Philip met him, and he came back last year and cycled from Seattle down here. Chantal, wave out to our friend Chantal in Switzerland. Freda and Marty on the Gulf Coast. I mean, we've met some amazing people on our journeys that we've been in contact with. Shout out to Martine in the outskirts of Amsterdam. Philip wasn't able to stay with her this time because he didn't do the bike portion of the trip, but this was my 4th visit with her. So, we're like family at this point. There's so many really cool experiences we've had. Werner and Karen with the bicycle festival that we attended in Germany. And we hosted a couple here she was from Germany, he was from Tijuana, and they rode around the world. And like 4 years later, they hosted Philip and me in Munich. So Philip and I have like this network of friends that goes beyond us because of all the wonderful experiences that we've had.
I love it so much. Thank you both for being willing to come in and share and talk about all of your adventures together and how you work together and how it works and how to, make it a great journey for both of you, even though you might have different styles and different desires along the way, but making it a win for both of you. I mean, really the epitome of teamwork for sure. So, Philip, any parting words that you would like to share with our Warm Showers listeners about riding with a riding partner?
You just have to. Oh, good. That's a tough one. That's like almost like a job interview question. But Ken and I have worked it out over the years, and we do have our disagreements, but we're able to sort of come together at the end. And either it's a compromise or it's something we both can live with. And we've done an excellent job of it. I can't say enough thank yous to Ken for his generosity over the years and sort of taking me initially on a tour that's it's been an amazing journey for the last 25 years. I've thoroughly enjoyed all of the rides we've done. And you just have to want to do it, and if you don't, well, then maybe you ought to find something else or find another partner, but you have to want to do this together. And it's been, I look forward every summer to taking another tour with Ken because it's just an excellent time.
Yeah. Thank you. Very good. Ken?
Well, Philip, you're one of my best friends. We did mention that in addition to our trips, that I've done several trips to visit you up in Seattle. You've come down here and done like the Channel Islands several times, other things that we have done together. And, it's almost like we're kind of, as we're getting older, becoming this old married couple that we really look out for each other and we really help each other out. Just like this last trip, getting on the train. I had a bike, he didn't have a bike, but just, with this one arm helping me out, which really kind of, was necessary, and me helping him out because, he wasn't able to have certain mobility and stuff. So just looking out for each other. And every time we're together, it's just a celebration of our friendship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you both again so much for being here. And I'm excited to continue to hear about your journeys and what's coming next. So please, as always, Ken, keep me posted. And for everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us for another episode. And whatever platform you are listening, we would love a rating and a review or a comment. And it lets us reach more people with the Bike Life podcast. Thank you again. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed the show as much as we enjoyed making it. Wherever you are listening, please leave us a rating and a review as it helps us reach more cyclists and hosts around the world. Visit us at Warmshowers.org to become a part of our community, or on Instagram at Warmshowers_org. If you would like to be a guest on the show or submit a question, please make sure to email us at podcast@warmshowers.org.